Saturn represents our boundaries, responsibilities, and the areas where we feel a weight of the world pressure to excel. When it resides in the 11th house, the domain of friendships, social circles, hopes, and humanitarian goals, the individual often experiences a complex journey from social isolation to becoming a pillar of their community. The weight of social responsibility. Individuals with Saturn in the 11th house often grow up feeling like an outsider. There is frequently a sense of being in the world but not of it, as if everyone else received an instruction manual for social interaction that they missed. In youth, this can manifest as profound shyness or a preference for the company of older, more experienced mentors rather than peers. This isn't necessarily because the individual lacks social skills, rather, Saturn demands quality over quantity. These people take their friendships very seriously. They are not interested in the superficial networking that defines modern social climbing. To them, a friend is a commitment, and a social circle is a structure that must be built on integrity. They would rather have 2 deeply loyal, long-term companions than 100 acquaintances who don't truly know them. The architecture of ambition. The 11th house is also the house of hopes and wishes. With Saturn here, dreams are rarely flighty or whimsical. Instead, they are treated as projects requiring a 10-year plan. There is an inherent fear of failure regarding one's long-term goals, which often leads to a slow and steady approach. While others might leap at opportunities, the Saturn in 11th house person is busy calculating the structural integrity of their path. They are the architects of the future, often drawn to large-scale organizations, NGOs, or political structures where they can implement systemic change. They find their purpose not in individual glory, but in how they can contribute to the collective machine. Challenges and lessons. The shadow side of this placement is a recurring feeling of loneliness or the lonely at the top syndrome. Because they are so cautious about whom they trust, they may inadvertently build walls instead of bridges. There is often a fear of being judged by the group, leading them to suppress their eccentricities in favor of a responsible or professional persona. Furthermore, Saturn here can bring lessons through social rejection or being let down by groups. These experiences, though painful, serve a specific purpose. They teach the individual to rely on their own internal validation rather than the fickle approval of the crowd. Saturn eventually rewards the individual with a reputation for steadfastness and reliability. By middle age, they often find themselves in leadership positions within their communities, precisely because they are the only ones willing to do the hard, unglamorous work of keeping the group together. The mastery of the collective. As the individual matures, the Saturnian burden transforms into Saturnian mastery. They become the person everyone turns to when a group project is falling apart or when a community needs a voice of reason. They learn that true belonging isn't about fitting in, it's about contributing something of lasting value. They find that their best friends are often people they have known for decades, individuals who have survived the tests of time and pressure. Their humanitarian impulses become grounded in reality, shifting from idealistic dreaming to tangible social reform. In the end, Saturn in the 11th house teaches that while the path to finding one's tribe may be long and arduous, the resulting foundation is indestructible. When Saturn moves through the 11th house, the zodiac sign it inhabits acts as the material used to build those social structures. It dictates the flavor of your social boundaries and the specific challenges you face in groups. The fire signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. In fire signs, Saturn creates a tension between the desire to lead and the fear of being seen. Aries, you may feel a heavy responsibility to initiate social change but fear that your individual spark will be extinguished by the group. Leadership is earned through patience, not just impulse. Leo, there is a deep-seated fear of being ignored or undervalued in social circles. Mastery comes when you stop seeking applause and start using your creative authority to empower others. Sagittarius, you take your belief systems and tribes very seriously. You might feel restricted by dogmatic groups, eventually finding freedom by building a social circle based on shared, grounded wisdom. The earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. Here, Saturn is in its element, focusing on the practical utility of friendships and networks. Taurus, you seek stability and material security through your connections. You are the rock of your friend group, though you must guard against being overly rigid or staying in stagnant circles for too long. Virgo, socializing feels like work. You are the fixer for your friends, but you may struggle with being overly critical of group dynamics. Your path involves learning that social perfection is an illusion. Capricorn, Saturn is at home here. You are a powerhouse in large organizations. You view social standing as a mountain to climb, often achieving significant influence late in life through sheer endurance. The air signs, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. Saturn in air signs focuses on the intellectual and ethical contracts we make with society. Gemini, you may feel an initial awkwardness in communication or a fear of being shallow. You eventually become a master of serious, specialized networking and meaningful dialogue. Libra, friendships are treated like formal contracts. You may feel a heavy burden to keep the peace, often attracting older or more serious partners and friends who test your boundaries. Aquarius, this is a traditional dignity for Saturn. You are the ultimate social architect. You may feel like an alien in your youth, but you possess the rare ability to organize large-scale movements with detached, scientific precision. The water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. In water signs, Saturn attempts to provide a container for the unpredictable nature of emotions in a group. Cancer, you seek a family within your social circle but often fear being emotionally overwhelmed by others. You learn to set boundaries that protect your heart while still caring for the collective. Scorpio, you are drawn to intense, transformative groups but fear betrayal. You take loyalty to an extreme, often acting as the silent, powerful force that holds a group's secrets or finances together. Pisces, there is a profound sense of duty toward the marginalized. You may feel lost in the crowd or burdened by the world's suffering, but you find your footing by providing structure to spiritual or healing communities. A transit of Saturn through the 11th house is often described as the harvest season of the astrological cycle. Having recently spent nearly 3 years in your 10th house, defining your career, reputation, and public standing, Saturn now shifts its gaze toward how you integrate those achievements into the broader collective. This transit is less about personal ambition and more about social accountability, peer group audits, and the crystallization of your long-term dreams. The social audit, thinning the herd. The most immediate effect of Saturn entering the 11th house is a thinning out of your social circle. During this 2.5-year period, you may feel an increasing intolerance for superficial connections or fair-weather friends. Saturn acts like a sieve, allowing only the most structurally sound relationships to remain. This can initially feel like a lonely period. You might find yourself withdrawing from clubs, organizations, or group chats that no longer resonate with your maturing identity. However, this isn't isolation for isolation's sake. Saturn is clearing away the social noise so you can focus on alliances that actually support your long-term growth. You are learning that having 3 reliable allies is far more powerful than having 300 acquaintances. The reality check on hopes and dreams. The 11th house governs our grandest visions for the future. When Saturn transits here, it demands a feasibility study on your dreams. If you have been living on vague somedays, Saturn will force you to get practical. Dream or delusion? You will be confronted with which of your goals are actually achievable and which were merely escapist fantasies. The blueprint: this is the best time to create a 5-year or 10-year plan. Saturn rewards the grind toward a vision. If you put in the structured effort now, the rewards at the end of this transit are often permanent and substantial. Responsibility to the collective. While the 10th house was about your individual status, the 11th house transit asks, what do you owe your community? You may find yourself taking on a heavy leadership role in a nonprofit, a professional guild, or a social movement. This isn't usually fun work, it's the logistical, administrative, and often thankless labor that keeps a community running. You are being tested on your ability to collaborate. If you are too rigid, you will clash with group dynamics. If you are too passive, the group will drain your energy. The goal is to find your center of gravity within the masses, learning to contribute your unique skills without losing your individuality to the hive mind. The harvest of instant karma. Astrologers often call the 11th house the house of gains. Because Saturn represents the law of cause and effect, this transit often brings the literal results of the work you did over the last 28 years. If you have worked with integrity, this can be a time of massive professional rewards, influential new mentors, and the realization of a major life goal. If you have cut corners, Saturn may bring social censure or the collapse of a project that lacked a solid foundation. By the time Saturn leaves this house, your social landscape will look different. It will be smaller, perhaps, but it will be made of diamonds rather than glass. You will emerge with a clear understanding of who your true people are and exactly what steps are required to turn your highest aspirations into a living reality.